In this episode of the Leadersmith podcast, I'm going to talk about how Google manages its managers. This is really interesting. Stay tuned.
In a world of incompetent bosses, micromanagers, and petty tyrants, you are listening to The Leadersmith. Now, here is your host, Darren Gerdes.
So Google is a pretty fascinating company, and I've read a number of books about Google, including How Google Works by Eric Schmidt, which I've used actually some sections of that in class, or Work Rules by Laszlo Bach. And what I'm about to talk about actually resonates because Bach talked about something very similar to this. And how I got here was I stumbled over an article in Inc. That said Google identifies its very best leaders using these 13 questions, and it uses Google's own internal survey. So that article by Scott Motz, which was essentially the survey, led me to the survey itself, and the survey was really, really interesting. So they actually make it available for the public. I'll put the link below. It's from reworkwithgoogle.com. So I'll put the link below in the description. Okay, so the survey itself, again, is only 13 items. Now, generally when we do a review, we're doing a review, the boss is reviewing the employees. Here, this is the reverse. The employees are reviewing their managers, and they're managing them on these 13 criteria, and over time, they've massaged these criteria to be the kind of leader that Google wants them to have. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of these and just offer a little commentary. So the first one is this. One, I would recommend my manager to others. Now, remember, this is the employees ranking their managers on a 5-point Likert scale. So, strongly disagree to strongly agree. So again, one is I would recommend my manager to others. If you don't get this one, well, something's probably not right. I mean, this is really like if you really want to work for this person or not. And that's a very strong, very positive way of getting to the truth about what's going on with this person. You can act like a tyrant and get results all day long as you only have to please the people above you. But if you have to please the people below you, you have to act very differently. That's the basis of 360 evaluation and why we started doing that. Well, here, that's a great question. Okay, number 2, my manager assigns stretch opportunities to help me develop in my career. Now that's great. Now that's great on a number of levels, but okay, so your job as a leader is to help your people grow, right? And if your manager is helping you grow, that should be reflected in this. So my manager assigns stretch opportunities to help me develop in my career. What does it say when your manager doesn't think enough of you to help you stretch or is not thinking about your growth? He's either into himself or he doesn't trust you or whatever, but that's a great question. Okay, number 3, my manager communicates clear goals for our team. Okay, communication is one of the essential components of what managers do all day. They have to communicate, they have to know where they're going, and they have to be able to communicate and help others understand things. I mean, that's their bread and butter. So being able to communicate clear goals. If you're vague, if we don't understand what you're saying, if you're sending us different directions, your management isn't going to be working very well. This is another good question. Number 4, they're all good questions, but number 4, my manager gives me actionable feedback on a regular basis. Now, that is lacking very often in management where you're getting good feedback. You might be getting told, go do this. Okay, that's communication, but unless you get that, it's like a circuit, right? Unless you get the feedback in a cycle, you don't know if you're doing well. It's why robotics has a hard time. Think about a robot trying to open a doorknob, right? And a robot arm opening a doorknob. It doesn't necessarily know how strong it is and is not necessarily getting the feedback, and like your hand would be getting a feedback of how, so it will rip the door right off the hinges because it doesn't understand, or it's too soft and it doesn't open. That's why feedback's important, because the feedback is telling you what's going on, whether you're doing it right or wrong. And very often managers are bad about giving appropriate feedback. If they give actionable feedback on a regular basis, it's helping the employee grow and develop the correct way. And again, it has to be appropriate, and it has to be ongoing. Think about a coach who gives their people feedback. Hey, at the end of the season, good job, Tom. If in game 2 and following, if you had only been in your right position all the way through instead of wandering around the field, that would have been great. That doesn't help at the end of the season, and that's what we do. We wait until the evaluation at the end of the year, and then we give this feedback. Well, but I could have been fixing this all the way through. So actionable feedback on a regular basis. It has to be there if you want to help them grow. Okay, number 5, my manager provides the autonomy I need to do my job, i.e. does not micromanage by getting involved in details that should be handled at other levels. Okay, so one thing that my MBA students hate, hate. For years, my graduate students have told me is micromanagement. And micromanagement it happens for a good reason, but on the backs of something bad. Okay, so the good reason is your manager wants to make sure something gets done, but it's on the back of something bad is that they don't trust you. And they're telling you that they don't trust you because they feel like they have to look over your shoulder. So they want to get the work done, but because they don't trust you, they micromanage. Okay, so here it's saying my manager provides me the autonomy that I need. That's saying my manager trusts me to be able to do the job and not get involved in details at my level, only getting involved in details where it's something that I can't handle that I need to bring up to him. So again, if your tendency is to micromanage, ask yourself why. It's because you don't, 9 out of 10 times it'll be because you don't trust your people. And then address that. Figure out what you need to do. Do they need training? Do they need help? Do they need some kind of guidance or encouragement? Give them that and then step back and don't look over their shoulder. Okay, number 6, my manager consistently shows consideration for me as a person. This goes back to Theodore Roosevelt's quote, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Care about people. If you simply care about people, then a lot of other things fall into place. But now there's a deeper history here too. Essentially, all of management comes down to either doing the job, doing the task, or showing that you care about people. Its consideration is actually one of the terms used for one of the 2 core buckets of things that managers do according to the early management studies or early leadership studies. All right, next. Number 7, my manager keeps the team focused on priorities, even when it's difficult, e.g. declining or deprioritizing other priorities. Okay, now that's really interesting because staying on top of priorities is going to be important. And the manager needs to be the person most pointing at what those priorities are. And now working with a team to assemble what those priorities are, sure, but making sure that there are priorities, not everything is equal. Sometimes we get into this trap where we start thinking, well, everything has to have equal value or equal weight, and no, it doesn't. So there are certain things that are more important than other things. And that's always true. It's the Pareto principle. It's always, always, always true. So if you have a priority, according to Brian Tracy, you have to have posteriorities. Posteriorities mean prior means first, and posterior, like your rear end. Posterior means last. If there are priorities, there must be posteriorities. So you have certain things that you have to focus on that are more important. Managers need to keep on top of that and not let everything be given equal weight. Otherwise, you're going to have other problems. Okay, number 8, my manager regularly shares relevant information from their manager and senior leadership. This is hard for a lot of managers. It's especially hard for old school managers who think that knowledge is power, and if I share what I know, then I've lost my power. No, share what you know. You don't lose anything by sharing what you know. You actually build bonds. You build teams. It's not. This isn't the CIA. Share what you know. Let people understand what's going on, and you'll help them move down the path more rapidly. Number 9, my manager has had meaningful discussion with me about my career development in the past 6 months. Now that's a really interesting and targeted phrase. Has had meaningful conversation with me about career development in the past 6 months. That means we've recently talked about how I'm going to grow and where I'm going to go from here. And it's very hard for some managers to do this because, one, they don't want to see, if you're a good employee, they don't want to see you go, right? Career development means you might be leaving me and going somewhere else, and we don't want to talk about that. And even if they do want to talk about that, doing it recently within the past 6 months, as opposed to, oh yeah, I did that 6 years ago or whatever. It's different. Okay. So if you're trying to help your people grow, which is a core part of what management is or what leadership should be, then this should be, you should get high marks on that. Okay. Number 10, my manager has the technical expertise, e.g. technical judgment in tech, selling and sales, accounting and finance, required to effectively manage me. That means essentially this: my manager is competent and is in the right seat to be a manager. Now that's a great question, because competence is one of those very highly valued things that a leader should have. So a leader should be honest, and they should be competent, and they should have a vision, says Kuzes and Posner. But competence, if that competence isn't there, a lot of other things fall apart. And so Google is asking about technical competence. Does my manager have the technical competence in order to be the manager? Okay, number 11. The actions of my manager show that they value the perspective I bring the team, even if it's different than their own. Now, in a day like today where we're thinking so much about diversity, that's really important, because your tendency, let's say you're a manager, right? Your tendency is going to be to appreciate and hire and think more favorably of people and ideas that are like your own, right? Oh, wow, he said something that I was just thinking. He must be very smart. Not necessarily. Maybe somebody with a different perspective is going to broaden you or help you see things that you don't otherwise see. But very often managers fall into this trap where they think, like, if somebody thinks like me, that's good. If they don't think like me, then they're somehow opposing me, or they're not they're not as good as people that think like me. And that's a very dangerous trap. So this is a good one to help you see if the manager is willing to embrace ideas that are not their own. Again, the actions of my manager show that they value the perspective that I bring the team, even if it's different from their own. Okay, number 12, my manager makes tough decisions effectively, e.g. decisions involving multiple teams, competing priorities, etc. Okay, so my manager makes tough decisions effectively. Well, okay, if you're sitting in that manager's seat, I think that many people can do the job of the manager for, I don't know, 80% of the time, maybe even as high as 90% of the time. I mean, this isn't rocket science. But it really gets the separation between a good manager and a bad manager comes at those pivotal points, and where it's really needed, it's really, really, really needed. And so to be able to make tough decisions effectively, where there's competing priorities, that's important. And to be able to do that in the context of relationship, where you're factoring everybody in, that's incredibly important as well. So all of these questions kind of work together to triangulate to see if that manager really is a good manager. Okay, so number 13 says this: my manager effectively collaborates across boundaries, and in parentheses, e.g. team, organizational, etc. Okay, so that across boundaries is really important. That networking function, it's hard to overstate how important it is to network within or without the organization, but not just stay within your own unit. And our tendency is to, as you know, a manager is to just stay and just take care of your people. But your job is actually to be the person that is the external spanner, the primary external spanner from your unit, and to network and negotiate things with others, with other units. So as a manager, that networking function cannot be overestimated. You need to be the person that's the go-between between higher ups and what your people need, between your department and other departments, if there's some kind of way that you can collaborate. And you also ought to make sure that people within your department aren't caught by having to go through you to go to them, but they can do the same thing. But you're really the point person with the power. So you need to be able to effectively collaborate across boundaries. Okay, so the survey ends with this final couple questions, and it says the manager feedback survey also asks for confidential comments from Googlers. 1, now again, this is employees evaluating their managers. Number 1, what would you recommend that your manager keep doing? And this is a great question because it helps us understand. It's the feedback for the manager to let them know, are you on track yourself? Are you doing the right things? What should you keep doing? Or, and then the second one says this: what would you have your manager change? Now that's going to be the hard feedback one. The first one is more, attaboy, you're doing the right thing. The second one is saying, no, you're really off the mark here on this and that and the other thing, and you really ought to change that. Okay, so that is the Google survey. And then I'm gonna leave the link here, and you can make it your own and customize it, and you can download it. Google makes it available for everyone else, which I think is remarkable. Google's not losing anything, because Google's culture is such that you really have to be in that culture in order to make this work. So it's not like, by giving this to you, that they're going to lose something. It's, remember the concept earlier where we were talking about how, oh no, what if I share this information? They're not worried about it. They're sharing this freely, and you can use this to make your team better. But if you're going to make your team better, they're going to be evaluating you, and you have to be open and honest and humble enough to accept that criticism if you want to be the kind of leader that you would want to follow. Okay, well, that leads me to our quotation for contemplation for today, and that comes from Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. He said, quote, "The way management treats associates is exactly how associates will treat their customers." Okay, so that's the power of management. It's your example. The way that you act is the way that your people are going to act as well. And that's the beauty of this survey. Okay, so thanks. That's all that I have for today. I hope that helps you think through what you should be doing as a manager, how you should be acting. And, I hope that a number of you will go to this link, take this, and use this on your own so that you become the kind of leader that you would want to follow. Thanks for your time.